Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet, and let's get started. Have you ever made the decision to leave your job in the middle of a shift? For what reason? If so, part 2. Used to work at Domino's when I was in college. My shift was set from 2 to 11 during the summer. I had lessons from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. during the summer. The store manager would often tell me to come in at 1 since lunch was so busy. That was fine by me, but the catch was that every night before midnight I had to go online and do readings for a writing class. It was written on a whiteboard and you had to sign your name after each reading for it to count. I was fine with leaving at 11 p.m. because it would only take 20 minutes and I could do my studies at home before going to bed. Not now. The night assistant manager was a lazy jerk who always found a way to keep people later than they were supposed to. Since we were paid by the hour, he would think it was a treat. I always told him, hey man, I have to leave at 11 so I can finish my homework before midnight. He told me I could do it in the morning or before my shift, which didn't bother him. I talked to the store boss after coming in late one night. I told him I was free to leave at 11, and he said, sure, I'll talk to Brian about it. If I got there at 1, I could help with lunch and no one would question it. Brian didn't like that, so he would often keep me up past 11. I would try to do the reads during my lunch break sometimes, but I couldn't always do them that way. At 11 p.m., the shop wasn't busy, so I was about to leave when Brian said, no, I need you to stay to clean out the walk-in. I took off my apron and shirt, I always wore an undershirt, and told him to F off, then I left. The shop manager asked what happened when I came to get my last check, and I told him. He told me it wouldn't happen again, but I had already found another job by then. As a teen, I worked at a nearby golf course with a big driving range, mini golf, batting cages, and other fun things. I kept getting put in charge of the picker tractor that players hit as it drives around. It wasn't so bad to do that, I was just killing time by listening to music. The first problem was that the boss and another worker would call me on the walkie-talkie over and over to say I was not doing my job well and should drive somewhere else. When I did, they would call me again and tell me to go back. It was a game for them. The second problem was that we were told the evening shift, the shift I would work, couldn't go home until all the balls were picked up. This meant that after work, I'd have to drive for an hour and pick them up by hand for 2 hours. We closed at 10 p.m. during the week and 11 p.m. on the weekends. I was paid by the hour, but my shift began at 3 p.m., so sometimes I'd work up to 12 hours and then have to get up early for school the next day. Anyway, after a couple of months of this, one of the other employees didn't even bother to come in on a particularly busy Friday, leaving just the boss, me, and the other abusive employee. Over the course of the night, they used a lot of bad language, and I finally gave up. I got out of the picker tractor in the middle of the range where I could have been hit and left. Never came back. Another week later, the boss called and left a message asking if I'd be coming in for my shift that night. Yep, I was waiting tables during a lunch shift at a restaurant/bar in the downtown area of my city. I was the only server working that day. We had a busser that was also the dishwasher, so I was bussing my tables as well. The owner was there. Now, this guy was always kind of an a-hole, but whatever. Usually we could get through it and it was fine. I only worked there 2 to 3 lunch shifts a week to supplement my income. During the lunch rush, he proceeds to tell me to make sure the customers' glasses were never empty, refill the iced tea/water. He doesn't want to see empty glasses or people waiting. I calmly told him I was the only one working, so it'd be helpful if he picked up the picture and went around. I had like 8 to 10 tables going at once. He then told me I wasn't running the food fast enough. Again, I told him I'm alone here, maybe you could help run food. As I was at the line, he yelled at me because some iced teas were at half glass and I hadn't refilled. Then he actually decided to run food, grabbed plates that were for 2 different tables. I tried to stop him, but he charged on, dropped food at the wrong table, then yelled at me for the mistake he made, said I made him look like a fool. I'm just trying to finish my shift. For the 3rd time, he decided to yell at me for not refilling glasses fast enough as I was walking back with dirty plates. I dumped the plates in the bucket, turned around, handed him my book and all the money in my apron, including my tips, told him to do it all himself if he thought he could do it better, and walked my A out of the restaurant. had a pretty awkward job in a call center. People would become irate over the length of time it took them to speak with us. We would receive a ton of back-to-back calls. Management would literally walk the floor and loudly announce, "We have X calls in queue, people," which we were well aware of because we could see the call queues at our workstations. Well, one particular day, I and a coworker had been given a project to review some orders and ensure everything was correct. The order itself, shipping address, etc. My coworker was put in charge, despite the fact that I had more tenure than she did, but whatever. And we split up the workload and got to work. We weren't permitted to use telephones on the work floor, so I finished much earlier than she did and was just thinking while sitting at my desk. She then complained about my being lazy and not performing my work, etc. to the department manager. The department manager and my supervisor called me into a meeting the very next day and informed me that there is a perception going around the office about you not getting your work done in a timely manner. Remember that only a few months prior, I received the MVP award for overall sales and calls answered. I was completely taken aback by this charge. I remained silent and let them chastise me for 20 minutes. I returned to my work after that, packed up everything I owned, and left through the front door. 30 minutes later, my supervisor, whom I had known for a few years at a previous job, called me. I could see he felt bad since he knew it was all BS, but he still tried to get me to come back. I chuckled and firmly refused to continue working under our department manager's utterly inept direction since I knew she would run the business into the ground. That concluded my one and only work exit experience. Have the members of your HOA or any of your neighbors ever done anything absolutely outrageous? Part 2. I was the owner of a condominium and lived above the jerk who was reportedly living there for free because he was a friend of the owner. In all honesty, I believe that he was the son of the proprietors. I was taking a shower and walking around at 5:30 in the morning, and the guy was always complaining about it. Since I have a job that requires me to commute for almost 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on the traffic, why is that? Since the individual did not have a job, he spent the entire day at home. In response to my complaints to the HOA, he began throwing parties and playing loud music past 2 in the morning on weekdays. He also denied being home during those times. The condominiums were located in a building that had 8 units, and the entrance could be accessed by either walking up the sidewalk or the stairs. Every time he had a party, which was quite frequently, I would walk down my stairs and record his parties with the time. After that, I'd file a noise complaint with the police, stating that it was not an emergency in order to obtain a case number. It was the only way I could achieve my goal of having the HOA carry out an eviction. My upstairs neighbor is completely insane, and I live in a condo that has 2 stories. Before I moved in with my boyfriend, she would frequently call the police for the smallest of things. She would do this even before I moved in. There are fans in both of our bathrooms, and one of them was a little louder than it should have been. However, when we turn on the light in that bathroom, she would either pound on the floor or come downstairs and pound on our door in response to the noise. It got to the point where she had a meltdown at our door saying that she wears earplugs to sleep because the sound is literally driving her crazy, and if we don't get it fixed, she'll call the condo association or the police. I eventually disconnected the fan from the light because it got to be too much with dealing with her at our door, and the police were tired of dealing with her. During the time that I was 8 months pregnant and on my way to work, she blocked my car and relentlessly pressed me with questions about when the issue is going to be resolved. On the occasion that we light up our patio, she'll spray air freshener in our direction. Her identity is well known to each and every one of our complex's neighbors. While he was walking down the block, a neighbor was walking toward him and literally stopped him. She was about 5 feet tall, while he was 6 feet tall. She yelled at him to be considerate of other people who were walking on the sidewalk. In spite of the fact that she had called the condo association on multiple occasions, they have finally informed her that she's not a good fit for the condos and that it may be time for her to part ways. Despite the fact that she has been quiet ever since, she continues to mumble something under her breath in passing or bang on the floors in a strange and random manner. My now 4-year-old only knows her as the crazy lady. An HOA of which I'm not a member fined me. In her condo owners association, my mother-in-law serves as president. She ended up in the hospital for emergency surgery back in January and spent several weeks recovering in the intensive care unit. She's fine now. The maintenance man needed the association's keys in order to perform some work on a few of the units during this time. Everyone was in my mother-in-law's condominium. I promised to get the keys since it just so happened to be on my way home from work. While I'm there, I notice that her doorknob's tumbler completely pops out, negating the purpose of having a lock. I go to the hardware store across the street, purchase a new lock set, replace it, and end the day there. I give her the keys and the extra copies I had made on our next visit to the hospital. Excellent, magnificent, splendid. I'm going to her condo the following week to get the mail and water the plants. When the maintenance man notices that I'm present, he returns the association keys to mother-in-law's safe, remarked that her key wasn't working when he tried to do it earlier. I described the circumstances, he nods his head, and is a nice guy, but he told me that he had discussed it with the board vice president and advised me to give him a call. Yes, I do. Guy clarifies that in the event of an emergency, etc., the association always maintains a copy of the key for the unit per association policy. I listen, clarify, and state that in theory, the association does have a copy because mother-in-law, the president, has all the copies. It's also an exceptional circumstance. VP refuses to accept it. A few days later, the maintenance guy knocks on my door while I'm there doing mail and plants once more. He needs to fine me even though he's the messenger, $75. I assumed it was a joke, but he hands me a letter claiming that I'm to blame because I altered the lock set. I responded by providing my official mailing address and social security number as requested for their records in case of default on payment. It all ended up getting resolved, and because mother-in-law was already in a world of S following surgery, I didn't make a stink of it, but the effing balls on the VP when he got a second of power. When they first moved in, my parents were having issues with the homeowners association. It was a very strict place that followed the rules to the letter, and there were annual inspections to ensure that everyone was adhering to the guidelines. Basically, anything that was located outside the walls of your house was subject to the security of the HOA, even if it was in your private backyard that was enclosed by a fence. My father would come up with inventive ways to do battle with them. At one point, he expressed his desire to have a hot tub, but because it was against the rules, he asked for permission to have one, but he was denied. On the other hand, he waited until the day after the inspection to get the hot tub installed. Ivy was planted at the base of the fence that was constructed out of wood. At the time of the inspection the following year, the hot tub was no longer visible from the vantage point from which the inspectors were standing to take their photographs. Furthermore, it didn't appear to be a wall, rather it appeared to be a large bush that had grown up. Having fought against them for many years, my parents ultimately decided to join them. They initially had a strong aversion to it, but after a few years, they managed to get all of their friends to join the board, and it eventually turned out to be a lot of fun to live in. Now the Homeowners Association is more concerned with making the community better and less concerned with the rules that people are breaking in secret. Whenever something is deemed to be dangerous, or when someone else lodges a complaint about it, they'll conduct an investigation into it. They continue to conduct annual inspections, but the primary reason for doing so is to assess liability and determine what maintenance needs to be performed. Compliance and fines are less of a concern. There's no doubt that it's not suitable for everyone, but it is something that has the potential to improve the community in which you live. If you want to watch the part 1, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for support.